Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by asking you a question. What is the one thing that keeps most people from living their best life? Think about it. It's not their talent, not their opportunities, and certainly not their circumstances. Many of us might point to the lack of resources or timing, but deep down it's something much smaller yet far more powerful. It's fear, that invisible wall that stands between us and the life we've been created to live. But here's the truth, fear isn't just a feeling, it's often a lie that whispers you can't. Let me share with you a story not of a man who lived without fear, but of someone who learned to confront it head on. Many of you know me as someone who was born without arms and legs, and maybe you're thinking, how could someone in his position even think of overcoming fear? Well, that's the point. I wasn't supposed to. According to the world, I had every reason to live in the shadows of insecurity and despair. I was told I wouldn't amount to anything, that my life was too limited, that my purpose was just to survive, not thrive. As a child, fear showed up early. I'd wake up wondering why I was different. I'd go to school dreading the looks and whispers. Every step felt like walking through a storm of doubt and rejection. I even wondered if God had forgotten me. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever looked at your situation and thought, why me? Why this? Why now? But let me tell you what I discovered. Fear isn't the absence of faith, it's often the opportunity for it to grow. You see, I came to understand something that changed everything. God didn't make a mistake with me. He didn't forget about me. In fact, He had a plan, and that plan wasn't just for me to survive, but to thrive. And the same is true for you. So how do we begin to break through fear? The first step is recognizing that fear's greatest weapon is deception. Fear magnifies the negative and blinds us to the truth. It tells us that we're alone when we're not, that we're too weak when we're not, that our circumstances are too big for God's promises. I'm here to tell you today that fear has no power unless you give it power. I remember the first time I spoke in front of a large crowd. My heart was pounding and my mind was racing with thoughts of doubt. What if they don't listen? What if I'm not enough? But then something remarkable happened. As I stepped onto that stage, I realized that it wasn't about me. It was about the message, the purpose, and the God who had equipped me for that moment. And let me tell you, the same God who equipped me is ready to equip you for whatever you're facing. Here's the key: you don't have to be fearless, you just need to fear less. And how do you do that? By shifting your focus. Fear thrives in the spotlight of our attention. When you focus on fear, it grows. But when you focus on faith, on God's promises, on His track record of faithfulness, fear begins to shrink. Let me give you an example. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff. Below is a vast canyon, and fear tells you, don't step out, don't take that risk, stay safe. But what if I told you there's a bridge just a few steps ahead? You might not see it clearly at first, but it's there. That bridge is faith. And faith doesn't require you to see the whole path, it just requires you to trust the one who built it. I've met so many people who have allowed fear to define their lives, people who have incredible dreams, talents, and potential, but they're stuck because fear has them convinced that failure is final. But can I tell you something? Failure isn't final unless you allow it to be. In fact, some of my greatest failures have been the doorway to my greatest breakthroughs. Why? Because God doesn't waste anything. Not our pain, not our mistakes, and certainly not our fears. There was a time when I thought my limitations were the end of my story, but now I know they were just the beginning. My greatest limitation became my greatest platform. The thing I thought disqualified me became the very thing God used to qualify me. And the same can be true for you. Whatever you're facing today, whether it's a fear of failure, rejection, or the unknown, I want you to know that God's reality in your life is greater than any fear you'll ever face. So what does it look like to live without letting fear conclude God's reality in your life? It starts with surrender. Surrendering your fears to Him and saying, God, I trust you more than I trust my feelings. I trust your promises more than I trust my doubts. And then it's about taking action. Faith isn't passive, it's active. It's stepping out even when you're scared, even when the path isn't clear, even when the odds seem against you. I'm reminded of one of my favorite verses, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7, did you catch that? God has given us power, not our own power, but His. Love, not just for ourselves, but for others. And a sound mind, the ability to think clearly and make choices rooted in faith, not fear. Friends, you were not created to live a life paralyzed by fear. You were created to live a life of purpose, joy, and impact. And here's the good news, you don't have to do it alone. God is with you, for you, and ahead of you. He's already in your tomorrow, preparing the way. As I close, I want to leave you with this thought. Fear may knock at the door, but you don't have to let it in. Instead, open the door to faith. Open the door to God's truth. Open the door to the reality that He is greater than anything you'll ever face. And when you do, you'll discover that the life you've been longing for, the life God has planned for you, is waiting on the other side. So take that step, speak to that mountain, face that fear. And remember, fear may try to conclude your story, but it can never rewrite God's reality in your life. You are more than a conqueror. You are chosen, loved, and equipped for such a time as this. Now go and live boldly, fearlessly, and faithfully. The world is waiting for the light only you can bring.